We've been exploring this idea around service this month. And what does it mean to serve? And what does it mean to serve healthfully? Because they're not always the same. You know, one of the things I learned early on in ministry, as with most things I learned in ministry, I did it wrong a number of times to make sure it didn't work and then tried something different. But I didn't recognize the difference between empowering and enabling. I didn't recognize the difference between service and something that was more like martyrdom. And so somewhere along the way, I figured out that I could only do so much. And that changed everything. Because it allowed me to step back and recognize and ask a question from a different perspective of how can I serve? You see, I see people in the world who are wonderful, caring, giving, loving, sweet people who don't take care of themselves. They tend to take care of everyone else, and then whatever's left gets to be for them. Do you know these people? Do you see these people in the mirror ever? I mean, no, I don't want to get too personal here, right? But that's sort of this thing that we want to give and we want to help and we want to support and we want to do for others. But I've discovered that we can only match people. And when I realized that, my shift in ministry was that I'm not here to give you something you don't have, but I'm here to match your energy, right? And so I can be of support to another at the level that they're willing to grow and to be who they are. You see, sometimes we like to go in through the world and we think that if we find the right guru, the guru will help us get to where we want to go. And I'm all for gurus. I think it's important, but we should recognize that they don't do our work for us. And so we are called upon to do our own work. And so in that awareness, everything begins to shift. We're sharing that in the early phases of ministry, I thought if we just taught everybody the principles, then everything would be fine, right? If everybody understood the principles of unity, then the world would just be perfect, wouldn't it? Well, you don't sound convinced, right? But it turns out there's more to it than just understanding the principles. Now, if everybody understood the principles of unity, the world would be a heck of a lot better, right? But it doesn't of itself solve all things, because there's the awareness and knowledge of principle, and then there's the practical application of said principle, right? So sometimes we say, this is what I believe, and yet our lives don't reflect what we say we believe. You ever notice that? Have you ever noticed I say, I believe that this is an abundant universe, and all of my needs are met in perfect timing and in right order, right? Because you're all well-trained to do your affirmations, and then an unexpected bill comes up, and freak out happens in the mind. Right? So there's a difference, right? Now, I'm not making it wrong. I'm just saying the awareness of being in the presence of God in all things, in all times, is an ongoing practice to bring into alignment that which we value, that's which we say we believe, and that which the place we actually live from. So, in realizing, as I moved into ministry and gone through, just looking at that it's now 30 years. How weird is that? To be 29 years old and have 30 years of ministerial experience is just weird. Let's just face it, right? So, it's one of those mysteries. No, but, I think about how long I've been doing this and what I've learned along the way. And what I've learned along the way is that creating healthy community is not only about spiritual principle, but community, that word comes from this idea of oneness, of with, to be with gifts is what it was, the Latin roots, with gifts. And so I love that idea that when we come together in community, in healthy community, we're developing that way of sharing our gifts. And in sharing our own gifts, we not only get to be fulfilled, but we fulfill something greater. In other words, the sum is greater than the parts. And yet, even in spiritual community, sometimes there's dysfunction. I'm going to give you a moment to be with that because you're shocked, right? Who knew, right? Because I say often in spiritual community, sometimes it's worse because we're all going to be so darn spiritual. We're too darn aware to be upset. And so sometimes we can do that spiritual bypass and just go, well, all of our wonderful things, rather than learning the skills necessary to be humans, better humans, as well as better spiritual beings. And so that's where it gets rich and interesting. Gary Simmons, who's sort of a guru for many around healthy church and how to do this, and he's got a great body of work. But one of the things he talks about is having, in a healthy spiritual community, you have three components. One is a shared vision. You realize why we're here together. We talk about in our community how we're here to transform the world. But that's a little lofty. And so you have to be able then to not only say, well, how do we do that? But we do that by bringing forth our part of it. And so our part of it is that we share these spiritual principles, these unity principles. We teach people how to apply them. We teach people how to practice them. We teach people how to be more healthy, how to experience a greater life. And that's our part of the healing and the transformation of the world. I don't know how to do the whole world, but I do know how to do my corner of the world. And so we come together in a shared vision of who we are and what we're about, and then we then move into what we call joyful ministry. Joyful ministry. And for me, this has been one of the most interesting things. I think I talked about it last week I don't know, who knows, he's always talking. Somewhere I was talking about this idea that we want to find the place to serve that brings us joy. That when we're serving out of obligation, when we're serving out of anything other, then we're not serving ourselves. And in truth, we're not really serving the world. That when we find that gift that is within us, that needs to be expressed, then we step onto a path of giving that gift to the world. For me, when I came into the church, I had some issues. It's so many issues. We won't go through all of them. It's a short day. But the issues I had around church, because I felt, I don't want to say wounded, but I felt restricted by the church I grew up in. And I believed that everybody was worshiping the same God, if there's only one God, and that I felt as if God didn't really care what you called him or her. I don't know where I got that crazy belief, but, that wasn't really supported in the church that I grew up in. So it wasn't until later that I found a community not unlike this that said, there's one God, one power. We celebrate and honor all paths to the divine. It's like, okay, I got to be part of it. I got to figure out what this is all about. And so in that, figuring that out, I realized that I wanted to be part of that. I started taking classes, and I realized so many things. I realized that I wasn't dealing with a universe that was random. I wasn't dealing with a God that played favorites. I wasn't playing with a presence or a power that rewarded some and punished others, but rather that there was a universal principle that delights in its self-expression. that wants to be expressed. Think about this. Life wants to be expressed. So the seed has within it the potentiality to fulfill itself. It's already there. Each of us has a God seed within us that wants to be fulfilled. It's not playing favorites. It's within all of us. But then, as Emerson says, we are left to make that recognition for ourselves. And so when we begin to discover our gift, the gift without being given is worthless. So for me, I didn't realize what I was doing, but there was an opening in the youth program. And I said, I love kids. Didn't have any of my own, which makes it even more easy to love kids. Right? Just saying. Right? I said, I love kids, and they have an opening, and maybe I should go do that. Might be fun. Greatest gift I ever received, because once you can explain these principles to a 9-year-old, you're in good shape. You can even work with adults. But of course, what is it they say, that we most teach what we most need to learn. And so I found by being willing to teach Sunday school and take these principles and see if I couldn't work with them in such a way that they'd work for a 9 to 12-year-old. And, that's such an interesting age, isn't it? I still remember so clearly one day, this little girl came in with her doll and a little eye makeup on. That's that age, isn't it? It's kind of still a little girl, but kind of moving into being, it's a wonderful thing. The gift for me was in being of service. The gift for me was then I got to learn and to grow and to become something more by being willing to serve others. So that shared vision and then joyful ministry is what it's all about. It's what we look to do here all the time. I always, people say, well, how can I help? And I'm like, what brings you joy? And it's wonderful, because the wonderful thing about human beings is not the same thing brings everybody joy. There are people that like to do accounting. They like it. They're good at it. It brings them joy. I am so happy for those people in the world. The rest of us need you desperately, right? And there's others that like to dig in the dirt, and there's others that like to do whatever. And so it's wonderful to say, where would you feel joy? Where would you feel fulfillment? Because that's where our gift is, and that's where, in giving the gift, we not only bless others, but we are blessed. And then he says the third component is not only having shared vision and joyful ministry, but healthy conflict resolution, healthy communication processes. Because, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you get a group of people together, let's say you have 10 people, and you ask for their opinion about something, you get 11 to 12 answers. Right? Because some people have 2 opinions about something, right? It's that wonderful thing. And so then, if we're not conscious and aware of our shared vision and our joyful ministry, sometimes we can go into that realm of thinking that is about right and wrong. This is how we should do it. This is how I want to do it. This is how we did it before. Now, this is not only true in church, but it's also true in our relationships. You ever come into a new relationship and started thinking it was going to be just like the old relationship? You realize there's sort of a different person here that has sort of different opinions. And so you have to figure that out. So when I understand that, then conflict is not something to be avoided, but something to be understood, something to be embraced. The healthy, loving resolution that allows us to recognize in each other the divine. And so God is having a different experience of itself through each one of us. And each one of us sees a piece, but not the whole. When we can begin to embrace each other, begin to embrace other perspectives, not from a place of right or wrong, but what works, then we can move into the realm of creation, of co-creation, of invention, of something new happening. Part of why I love being in this spiritual community that embraces all traditions is that we get to see the beauty of all religious faiths. We get to, I remember when Arlene was here, Moshe was here, and we got to celebrate Hanukkah. Yeah. I was going to say Passover, but I knew that wasn't right. That's coming. And just how beautiful, what a beautiful experience that was, just to be in the energy of that. And we didn't even have to become Jewish, right? Because what I love about this teaching is that we can have a place to ground our spirituality and no longer need to be better or worse than or compare or contrast with anyone else, but to appreciate everyone's paths. I was pained, as I always am, by this mass shooting in New Zealand, born out of hatred, born out of misunderstanding, born out of prejudice, and it hurts me. It hurts my heart. One of the great joys of being empathetic is you get to feel a lot. One of the great problems of being empathetic is you get to feel a lot. And so I just have been in prayer around this senselessness, this stupidity, this thing, and yet what it does for me is it wants me to redouble our efforts. That we have a message of inclusion. We have a message of love. We have a message of honor. We have a message that needs to be heard in the world. There will be bad people with us. Now, at the heart of everyone is the divine. Right? That's what we teach. So even this person who did the most heinous thing has as his essence the divine. But as I said, it's not enough to know something. He doesn't know it, clearly. So our work needs to be out there. Our work needs to be promoted, practiced, lived. As I said, I don't know how to change the world, but I know how to change what's in front of me. I know, more importantly, how to change what's inside of me. Ernest Holmes once said that we can't demonstrate beyond our capacity to understand or to embody wisdom. It's a wonderful thought, isn't it? That our life is the demonstration of what we know and what we believe. And so when we are doing our inner work and we are doing the most difficult of things, as I say over and over and over, the most difficult thing that Jesus asked us to do was to pray for those who persecute us, to love our enemies. That's the hard part. It's easy to love you guys. You're all nice. 95%, I don't. Okay, you're all nice. You're all wonderful, right? No, it's easy to be loving and supportive in this group because we're all fun and cool and hip and happening. But it's in the world when we're challenged that we really get to decide who we are. We really get to decide what I believe. And so as I was praying for these people, for their families, I was reminded I have to pray for the person who did this. You see, that's where real forgiveness lies. Now, justice needs to find its course. But in my heart, I can't afford to be anything less than loving. I have this wonderful nephew. His name's Riley Poor. And he's such a cool kid. Grew up in Crested Butte, skier, I didn't realize he was an extreme skier, which, if you don't know what that means, they do crazy stuff. Like, I'll just flip upside down and turn around 14 times and, It's like, because one time he was showing me one of his videos, and I was like, I'm so glad I didn't know you did this. Wonderful young man, smart, funny, intelligent, wonderful. And then he works for Nike and became a videographer. And so his extreme skiing career was winding down. He was out there filming and supporting other of the Nike team and doing this whole videographer thing. And one night they all went to the hotel afterwards, and I'm going to guess there was alcohol involved. I can't be certain, but I'm going to just take a wild guess. And they decided it'd be fun to jump from the balcony into the pool. And so he jumped from the balcony into the pool, landed wrong, broke his neck, almost drowned. Somebody had the wisdom to get him out, and so it changed his life. So here's this amazing young man, quadriplegic, who is so much my inspiration and my heart. But one time so going through this, there was that first period of time was very hit and miss. Would he ever be able to walk again? Would he ever be able to move again? Would he ever be able to do anything? Would he survive? And that was 9 years ago. He's still with us. But he got through that. But one time I was talking to him, and he said the most amazing thing. He said, I have to be, as he was going through this intense healing process, he said, I have to be so absolutely conscious of what's happening in my mind. I cannot afford any negativity. And I thought to myself, I, who have gone through seminary and have a reverend in front of my name, like, thank you. Thank you for teaching me the teaching, because we got to have an advanced course in how this principle works. Now, he still is challenged, but he has an amazing life. He has an amazing girlfriend. He has an amazing thing in the limitations that he now has. And so he shares with me that although it's not the path he would have chosen, the amazing gift that came through, he said, I always knew I was here for a purpose. And now I'm getting to fulfill my purpose in ways I had never imagined, and in ways I never would have had this experience not happen. Now that's spiritual insight and wisdom. That recognition that we must control the doorway to our mind. I watch our world right now, and it's so easy to move, it seems so easy to move into the otherness. The them and us, all of that. And I just suggest to us that we can't afford the luxury of being in that thinking. That we must do our work to know God as all things, in all people, everywhere. So for me, as we talk about our values, we talk about, one of our core values is diversity. I love that we have an interesting mix of people. We have tall people and short people. It's crazy. And we have men and women. We have straight and gay, and we have black and white and brown and orange, a few of those. Whatever. We have it all, and it's a celebration. Never is a tolerance, it's a celebration. Because for me, we get to see all of the ways that God shows up. So beautiful. That's thrilling to me. So we can't afford to practice negativity. We can't afford to allow our consciousness to move to that place. Some would call it the ego consciousness, the idea of separation. But rather, we must continue to work in that place of love and understanding and compassion and peacefulness. Now, that is not to say we don't take steps to right the wrongs of the world. But it is from the place, you say, why Jesus stands as a master for us is that he was in the world, but he brought who he was and his awareness and his understanding of his oneness with God to heal and to bless and to make a difference. And yet he called into question the prejudice of his day, the areas of separation of his day, to say, love one another, be kind, be compassionate. So in some ways, this is the most interesting time to be alive, to be a part of this unfolding consciousness that looks chaotic as heck sometimes. But those of us that know and continue to put our faith in the greater good, in the greater something seeking its revelation, continue to do our work, continue to go deeper, continue to do the things that allow Spirit to be made manifest in the world. And so for each of you, I honor that. I honor being a part of it. My nephew's taught me many, many lessons. But perhaps the greatest lesson is that no matter what, sometimes I think in teaching these principles, we think that if we just get the consciousness right, everything else, we get to live happily ever after. And that may or may not true. I don't think, it hadn't been for me, but I'm good if you do it. But rather, it's not that we get to control everything that happens, but we do get to be at choice about how we show up with what's happening to us, what's happening in our life. Will we make the world better? Will we be part of that beloved community that Dr. King spoke to us about? So thank you for being part of this journey. Let us pray. And just giving thanks for this day, for the blessed realization of the one life ever present, always available, for the realization that God delights in its self-expression in, through, and as us, for the understanding that there can be no separation. In oneness, there is oneness. And so we release those ideas of separation. We realize the very breath that we breathe is the divine breathing itself through us, beating our heart, making itself known. And we trust that this divine wisdom is unfolding, that it is guiding and directing our life. We choose and claim our inherent wholeness, our inherent beauty. We choose wisdom and understanding and compassion and forgiveness. We allow our light to shine brightly. We give thanks for the many blessings in our lives. We allow the divine to flow through us. And we participate in this divine flow, joyously giving, graciously receiving. How good it is to know this truth. How good it is to recognize the blessings of all of life, of its entirety. And as we speak this word today, we certainly surround those in New Zealand and the embrace of divine love. And we realize that love heals all, blesses all. We speak the word of truth this day as we bless all of our brothers and sisters, as we see a planet at peace and a world that works for all. We bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, and teachers of all faiths. We celebrate the one God, the one power. And we honor the many pathways to greater spiritual understanding and truth. So in joy and gratitude, then, this day I speak this word, and through the power of the living Christ, it goes forth to bless, to heal, to prosper. Giving great thanks, I simply allow it to be so, as together we say, and so it is. Amen.